People say you can feel it in your bones when something's wrong. I didn't. I felt it in the leftovers. Yeah, that's how this whole thing began. Not with lipstick on a collar. Not with whispers behind a door. It started with cold spaghetti in the fridge, portioned out for one when she always made enough for two. I'm Russell. 43. Tax consultant. Not the kind of guy you make movies about. I like Sudoku, chamomile tea, and mowing the lawn in symmetrical rows. I own 2 pairs of the same sneakers because I hate surprises. I've been told I blink too much when I lie, and I guess that's fitting since my wife never blinked at all. Her name's Trina. She's 38, works in branding. Stylish, magnetic, knew how to talk to a room and make them want more. I used to love watching her do it, watching her own every room I felt invisible in. We were opposites, yeah, but I thought that meant balance. Turns out it meant she got bored. The spaghetti night was 4 months ago. It was a Thursday. She said she had a networking mixer at a downtown rooftop bar. She left in a rush red dress, gold earrings, smelling like a magazine ad. I just finished my last virtual consult of the day and planned to surprise her with that silly garlic bread she loves. Instead, I found a note on the counter. Don't wait up, might be late. Love you. Red heart. And 1 Tupperware of spaghetti. Not 2. It sounds stupid, I know. But when someone starts cooking for just themselves, something's shifted. I sat there, eating her portion cold, rereading that note like it had hidden meaning. Love you. With a heart. Did it mean anything anymore? Or was it just a formality, like signing off an email with best? I didn't sleep much that night. Her key turned in the lock at 2:17 a.m. She smelled like cigar smoke and citrus. Her heels clicked unevenly down the hall. When I asked how the event went, she said it was productive and changed the subject to how we needed to replace the hallway light bulb. That was the first of many redirections. After that, the shifts came faster. New password on her phone. Yoga on Sundays when she always said stretching was a scam. Gym bag with men's deodorant in it, which she claimed was just stronger. And the worst part? She started laughing at me in that way people laugh at children who say something naive. A kind of amused pity. A kind of condescension. And I kept swallowing it. Every time. Like a doormat wearing a wedding band. I'd tell myself, don't be ridiculous, Russ. I blamed hormones. Stress. Work fatigue. Anything but the obvious. Because the truth? The truth hurt too much. I thought about talking to her. I even rehearsed what I'd say. I practiced in the mirror, pacing in the bathroom like a lunatic. Trina, are you seeing someone else? Have I done something wrong? Do you still love me? But every time I got close, she'd say something like, Russ, don't be weird, and I'd shrink. I'd fold. Because deep down, I already knew. It wasn't until the night of Macy's birthday party that the blindfold came off. Macy's our neighbor, a loud, chain-smoking widow who throws themed parties and makes everyone dress accordingly. That night was roaring 20s. I wore suspenders and felt like a cartoon character. Trina? She looked like a Gatsby-era goddess. At the party, I noticed her whispering with someone. A guy. Lean build, smug face, wore his shirt like he knew it was expensive. They laughed like they shared a secret. And then they disappeared. 15 minutes later, I found them not in some back room, but on the patio, standing too close. Way too close. His hand rested on her hip like it belonged there. They didn't even flinch when they saw me. I didn't confront them. I just turned, walked back to the kitchen, and dropped my beer into the trash like it was radioactive. That night, I didn't sleep. Again. The next morning, I did something uncharacteristic. I took action. I called the bar she always went to after work events. Told the bartender I'd be coming in. He said, sure, man, we'll see you tonight. That evening, I got there before she did. I brought the small ring box from my drawer, the one I'd kept safe since the proposal in Oregon. I handed it to the bartender, looked him square in the eye, and said, when she comes in, she'll be with a guy. Tall. Slick. Looks like he does push-ups just for fun. Give this to her when they sit down. Tell her it's from her husband. He looked confused but nodded. Then I left. I didn't even turn around. And as I stepped into the cold night, the weirdest part? I felt nothing. Just a strange emptiness, like I'd just hit delete on 12 years of my life. I didn't go home right away. After leaving the bar, I ended up driving aimlessly with no real destination in mind. I just needed to be in motion to let the silence of the car drown out the 1,000 thoughts hammering inside my skull. The lights of the city passed by like ghosts, restaurants, shops, people living their lives, while mine had quietly crumbled behind a smile and a bowl of cold spaghetti. I parked on a hill overlooking the city, engine off, windows slightly cracked. The weight of what I'd done began to settle in. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't even confront her. I simply walked away and handed her wedding ring to a stranger with a bar rag. Who does that? Who ends a marriage with a bartender as a messenger? But it wasn't really the end. Not yet. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. Not my brother, not my friends, not even the one coworker I sometimes talked to during lunch breaks. I was too ashamed. Not just because she cheated, but because I knew and still stayed silent for so long. I let myself believe it would pass. That I could fix it. That being a good man meant enduring in silence. Turns out silence is what ruins you the most. The next evening she came home earlier than usual. Her heels echoed through the hallway like guilt made audible. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to scroll through my phone while my heart drummed in my throat. She walked into the living room with her coat still on. Her expression wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was bewildered. She held the velvet ring box in her hand like it had been dug up from a grave. What is this, Russell? I didn't answer right away. I took my time standing up, mostly to stop my knees from shaking. I looked her in the eyes, and for the first time in months, I didn't look away. You know what it is, I said quietly. Her jaw flexed, and she blinked faster than usual. Still, she tried to regain control because Trina always needed to be in control. Is this some kind of performance? You embarrassed me. That bartender, he gave it to me in front of everyone. I raised my eyebrows. You were embarrassed? She set the ring on the counter and crossed her arms. So this is it? You just walk away without talking to me? You hand my ring to a stranger and act like that's closure? I actually laughed for the first time in weeks. But it wasn't joyful. It was hollow and bitter like a punchline at the end of a eulogy. Trina, I tried to talk. You shut me out every single time. You disappeared from this marriage long before I walked out of that bar. The only difference is I finally stopped pretending it was fixable. She said nothing. The silence between us felt louder than any argument. Then she did what I should have expected but still wasn't ready for. She started crying. Not weeping. Not sobbing. Just slow, methodical tears like her body was leaking guilt drop by drop. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said. I didn't reply. Because what was I supposed to say? Oh, good, you didn't plan the betrayal. That makes it all better? Instead, I went to our bedroom and began packing a bag. Not all my stuff. Just enough. Clothes. Laptop. Toothbrush. The basics. She followed me down the hall, still crying. Where are you going? She asked. I don't know yet, I answered honestly. But I can't stay here tonight. And maybe not ever again. She tried to touch my arm. I stepped back. That moment, that small flinch was when her face really broke. Not the act she put on for guilt. Not the indignant outrage from earlier. This was different. This was realization. The moment she knew she had finally pushed me to the edge, and this time I wasn't just bending, I was breaking. As I grabbed my keys and turned toward the door, she said, I was going to end it. With him. I was going to tell him tonight. I paused. Then I said, you already ended something. It just wasn't with him. And I left. I didn't check into a hotel. I didn't crash on someone's couch. I drove to my office, let myself in with my keycard, and slept on the crappy pull-out couch in the break room. That night, as I lay there in a suit jacket rolled up as a pillow, I stared at the ceiling tiles and whispered to no one, I don't even know who I am without her. And I meant it. But I'd have to find out soon. I didn't return home for 4 days. Trina messaged me twice, once asking if I was okay and once asking if I was coming back to talk. I left both unread. I didn't want to hear more half-truths. I didn't want her to twist the story into something vague enough for her to avoid blame. I wasn't ready for the guilt games or the emotional gymnastics. I needed space to think, to remember who I was before I became the guy who ignored red flags just to keep the peace. I lived off vending machine snacks and microwaved noodles in the office. At night, I stared out the window of the break room while the city buzzed below, mocking me with its normalcy. During the day, I sat at my desk pretending to work. My clients didn't notice. I'm good at being quiet, good at hiding. But I felt like I was on autopilot, like my soul was watching my body from outside, shaking its head and asking, how did we end up here? On the 5th day, something changed. My coworker, Devin, found me asleep at my desk. He didn't ask anything at first, just dropped a sausage biscuit from the deli beside me and said, you look like trash. Eat something. I could have lied. Said I was working late. Said I was fine. But I didn't. I just muttered she cheated and he nodded like he'd been waiting for it. Devin wasn't one for small talk. He was divorced twice and had the emotional range of a paperweight. But that morning he became something close to a friend. He didn't say the usual, she didn't deserve you or you'll find someone better. Instead he said, so now what? That question hit harder than anything else. Because I didn't know. I didn't have a plan. I hadn't even called a lawyer. I hadn't told my family. My mother thought Trina and I were still planning our trip to Maine this summer. If she knew her daughter-in-law had been hooking up with a guy from the bar scene, she'd call it trashy nonsense and demand blood. But I wasn't there yet. I wasn't ready to burn the house down, I just wanted to escape from it. Eventually, I knew I had to go back. Not for her, but for my stuff, for closure, for answers I probably wouldn't get but still needed to seek. I went late in the evening when I knew she'd be home. I wanted her to see me. To see the face of the man she gutted while pretending to love him. She opened the door slowly as if she wasn't sure who would be on the other side. Her face was pale, makeup-free, eyes heavy like she hadn't slept. I noticed her ring finger was bare. I wasn't sure you'd come back, she whispered. I didn't come to stay. She stepped aside. The house smelled the same, vanilla candles and clean linen, but something felt hollow. Like the soul had been sucked out of it. I walked past the framed wedding photo in the hallway and paused for half a second. I looked at the two smiling idiots frozen in time and wanted to warn them. I started packing in silence. Trina lingered near the doorframe, hugging her arms as if she was bracing for impact that never came. She finally spoke as I was zipping up my suitcase. I know you hate me. I didn't answer. I got lost, Russ. I didn't know how to talk to you anymore. You were always so still. Like a wall. I felt invisible. I turned and looked her dead in the eyes. You felt invisible, so you made me disappear? She blinked fast, like she wanted to cry again but didn't have enough left in the tank. I made a mistake, she said. No. A mistake is forgetting our anniversary. A mistake is calling me by the wrong name. You had a whole second life. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. She looked at the floor. I ended it with him. I shook my head. You ended it with us. That's the only thing that matters now. Before I left, she tried to hug me. I stepped back. That was when her face crumpled. Like something inside her finally shattered. I almost felt sorry for her, almost. But sorrow doesn't erase betrayal. It doesn't make cold spaghetti warm again. As I walked out the door, dragging my life behind me in a squeaky-wheeled suitcase, I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt done. And that, oddly enough, was its own kind of peace. I didn't go far after leaving the house. I checked into a modest little motor lodge about 20 minutes outside the city, the kind of place where the vending machine sells toothbrushes and the front desk clerk asks no questions. Room 112 had creaky floors, stained curtains, and a mattress that could barely support its own shape, let alone my regrets. But I didn't care. For the first time in years, I didn't have to pretend. I didn't have to fake small talk or tiptoe around mood swings or ignore red flags. I just laid there, staring at the water-stained ceiling, alone and somehow more myself than I had been in a long time. The first night was quiet. The second was harder. That's when the silence really started screaming. I began replaying everything, not just the betrayal, but all the missed moments that led up to it. All the times she said she was just tired, or when she declined dinner with my parents because she had a deadline. I thought about the vacations we didn't take, the fights we buried instead of solving, and the months she stopped calling me by pet names and started just using "hey." There's something brutal about realizing how long someone's been detaching while you were busy holding things together with both hands. I wanted to scream at her, not for cheating, but for the slow erosion, for the way she made me feel like the wallpaper in my own life, always in the background, never worth a second glance. On the third night, I finally responded to one of her texts. It wasn't long, just a single sentence. Please don't contact me unless it's for legal reasons. She didn't reply. I think she knew it was the first real boundary I'd ever set. I wasn't the old Russell anymore. Not the quiet guy who let everything slide just to avoid conflict. Not the man who gave and gave until he had nothing left but a ring and a memory of a laugh that wasn't his anymore. I took a week off work using some of my leftover PTO. Devin covered a few appointments for me, didn't ask questions. He just texted, "Let me know when you're breathing again." For a guy who once said emotions are a government conspiracy, that meant a lot. One morning, as I sipped bad motel coffee from a styrofoam cup, I found myself Googling divorce attorneys. That made it real. Before that, everything had felt temporary, like a long, bad dream. But staring at names of lawyers and reading Yelp reviews from bitter ex-spouses made it hit differently. This was no longer about heartbreak. It was about dismantling a life. I scheduled a consultation with a woman named Angela Kane. Her reviews said she was ruthless, organized, and unshakably calm. That sounded perfect. When I met her, I told her everything, probably more than she needed to know. I expected her to interrupt or take notes or act cold, but she just listened, nodded, and said one sentence that I haven't been able to forget. People don't cheat because they're happy, but they stay cheating because they think you'll never leave. That hit me in the throat like a steel pipe. I left her office with a folder, a checklist, and a surprising amount of clarity. The shock was fading. The anger was still there, buried beneath a layer of resignation. But most of all, I felt ready. Ready to close the chapter. Ready to stop loving a version of her that didn't exist anymore. That same evening, I drove back to the house one last time, not to talk, not to argue, but to get what was left. She wasn't there. I let myself in with my key, walked through what used to be my home, and saw the places where my presence had already been erased. My jacket wasn't hanging by the door anymore. My favorite coffee mug was gone. She'd even taken down the photo of us in Oregon, the one from the cliff where I proposed. The house looked emptier than when we moved in. As I packed the rest of my things, I found a letter on the nightstand. Handwritten. Folded carefully. I'm sorry. I really am. You didn't deserve this. I thought I wanted something else, but I didn't realize I'd lose everything in the process. I know there's no fixing this. But I hope one day you'll remember at least some of the good. I'm not proud of who I became. You were always better than me in ways I never admitted. Trina. For a second I stood there, just holding the paper. It didn't make me cry. It didn't even make me feel better. It just confirmed what I already knew. She only understood the damage once the silence started speaking louder than my words ever did. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. Not once. I didn't go back to the motel that night. Something about returning to that dim room with the buzzing light and paper-thin walls felt too stale. Like I'd outgrown even the place where I went to escape. So I drove instead. No destination, no playlist, just the hum of tires and the occasional sound of my own shaky breathing. Somewhere around midnight, I found myself in front of a diner I hadn't been to in years, an old place Trina and I used to stop at during road trips way back when we actually took those. I don't know what made me pull in. Maybe I was chasing a piece of myself I'd left behind on one of those long drives when the silence between us still felt comfortable instead of crushing. I ordered pancakes. At midnight. Alone. And for once it didn't feel sad. It felt honest. The waitress was older, kind. She poured me coffee and said I looked like someone who needed it. I wanted to tell her everything, just dump it all in her lap, because sometimes strangers are easier to talk to than the people who know you too well. But instead I just said, rough week. She nodded, patted my shoulder, and replied, ain't they all, honey? After I ate, I sat there longer than I needed to, staring out the window, watching as the fog settled over the empty parking lot like a blanket over something forgotten. That's how I felt, not just betrayed, not just lost, but forgotten. Like I'd been living in someone else's love story, and when she got bored, she just turned the page without telling me. That night I slept in my car, parked behind the diner. I used an old hoodie as a pillow and cracked the window just enough to breathe in the cold air. It was the best sleep I'd had in days. The next morning I called my mom. I wasn't planning to. I didn't want to hear the heartbreak in her voice, or worse, the rage. My mother adored Trina. Had her saved in her phone as my future daughter forever. She used to send her soup recipes and comment on all her Facebook posts. But I knew I had to tell her eventually, and I figured it'd hurt less coming from me. She answered on the second ring, chipper as always. Russell, I was just thinking about you. You and Trina still coming for Easter? There was a pause, the kind that stretches out and makes your stomach sink, and I said it. No, Mom. Trina and I, it's over. Silence. Then, what do you mean? Did you two fight? I took a deep breath and told her everything. Not every detail. I didn't mention the bar or the ring or the man in the green shirt who I now realized I'd seen twice before, once in our neighborhood. But I told her enough. When I finished, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just said something that caught me completely off guard. I always worried she didn't see you. I blinked. What do you mean? You loved her like she hung the moon, Russ. I saw that. But sometimes I watched her look at you and it was like she was scanning past you. Like you were a billboard she drove by every day. That hit harder than anything Trina ever said. We talked for another hour. She offered to let me stay in the guest room. I declined, not out of pride, but because I knew I had to stand on my own now. My whole life had been built around someone else's orbit. I needed to find my own gravity again. Later that afternoon, I picked up a storage unit key I had reserved a few days prior. A clean, windowless space. Empty, quiet, no memories in the walls. I brought my boxes there. My clothes. Some old notebooks. The watch Trina gave me on our 5th anniversary. I didn't have the heart to toss it yet, but I didn't want it near my bed either. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, I sat on a folding chair in that unit and looked at everything I had left. It wasn't much. But it was mine. I pulled out my laptop, connected to a weak hotspot, and opened a blank document. I titled it, The Things I Ignored. And I started writing. I wrote about the dinners where she smiled at her phone more than she looked at me. I wrote about the night she came home wearing a necklace I'd never seen and told me she picked it up on sale only for me to find a receipt from a boutique men's store in her glove compartment. I wrote about the way she slowly stopped saying we and started saying I. The document grew longer than I expected. Paragraphs turned into pages. And with every word I felt something shift. Like I was finally reclaiming my voice, one painful sentence at a time. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was my evidence. It was my reminder that I wasn't crazy. It was my beginning. I didn't realize how much healing could come from just admitting the truth to yourself. Not the filtered version. Not the polite summary you give to coworkers. I mean the real truth, the ugly stuff. The late-night realizations that you saw it coming and still smiled through it. The way you laughed at her jokes even when her eyes were on someone else. The way you begged in silence by doing the dishes, buying her flowers, rubbing her back at night, just hoping she'd look at you like she used to. That document I started in the storage unit grew into something else. Something alive. A confession, a eulogy, a journal of everything I couldn't say out loud. I didn't plan for it to turn into a project, but it became one. Every night, after work, after pretending like I was fine, I'd sit in that unit, unfold my chair, and write. The storage manager started waving at me like I was a regular. He even brought me a lamp one evening. No one should be writing under a ceiling bulb that sad, he joked. I thanked him with a tired smile. I wasn't ready to tell him that his small act of kindness was the most human connection I'd had in days. Meanwhile, Trina stopped texting. No calls. No emails. Complete radio silence. At first, that scared me. I kept waiting for the second wave, the anger, the justifications, the manipulations. But none of it came. And in a strange way, that hurt worse. It felt like she'd already moved on completely. Like I was just a chapter she'd flipped past, already deep into the next. One afternoon, Devin invited me out to a bar after work. Just a couple drinks, he said. We don't have to talk about anything unless you want to. We ended up at this dim little joint on the east side, full of pool tables and people who looked like they were hiding from something. I fit in perfectly. He didn't ask about Trina. He just talked. About his ex, about how he once accidentally brought 2 dates to the same birthday party, about how he lost his dog and cried harder than he did during either of his divorces. We drank cheap whiskey and ate the worst onion rings I've ever tasted. But for the first time in weeks, I laughed. Not the sad kind of laugh either, real laughter. The kind that comes from the part of you that's still intact. At one point, Devin looked at me and said, you know, Russ, she may have lit the match, but you've been walking around soaked in gasoline for years. I blinked. What the hell does that mean? He shrugged. You gave too much. And she got used to it. You forgot you were allowed to ask for something back. I let that sit for a while. I'd always thought love meant sacrifice. Patience. Compromise. But maybe I'd confused love with erasure. I'd let myself become a ghost in my own relationship, haunting rooms where I was no longer wanted. That night, back in the unit, I opened my laptop and renamed the document, What I Deserved. Because I did. I deserved honesty. I deserved effort. I deserved the kind of love that doesn't flinch under pressure or drift the moment things get quiet. I started listing things I would no longer tolerate. Lies, half-love, cold shoulders, being talked down to, being told I was too sensitive. I wrote until my hands cramped. I didn't stop until the list turned into something closer to a vow. A contract with myself. A reminder that I wasn't born to be someone's backup plan. Then came the unexpected part. Trina's mother called me. I hadn't spoken to her in months. We'd always been polite with each other. Not close, but cordial. I let the call go to voicemail, not ready for another emotional ambush. But later, curiosity got the better of me and I played it back. Hi, Russell. It's Maggie. I'm sorry to call out of nowhere, but I just wanted to say. I'm sorry. I didn't raise her to treat people like that. You didn't deserve it. I don't know all the details and I don't need to, but I know enough. If you ever need anything at all, just call. And thank you for loving her the way you did. It knocked the wind out of me. Because no matter how hard I tried to stay angry, those words reminded me that love wasn't my crime. My crime was believing it was enough to hold up a 2-person promise all on my own. The next morning, I got a message from Trina. Not a long one. Just 2 words. I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't reply. Not because I hated her, but because I was finally starting to love me again. The morning after Trina's message, I woke up in my storage unit to the sound of rain tapping the metal roof like a slow, deliberate metronome. It was oddly soothing. I stretched in the stiff folding chair, my back cracking like dry branches, and reached for my phone. Her message was still there, unread now because I'd archived it the night before. I stared at the wall for a long time, trying to decide whether "I'm sorry" meant anything anymore. Whether it was an act of redemption or just another stone tossed into a well she no longer cared to climb out of. I didn't feel like a victim anymore. Just hollow in a different way. Not the sharp pain of betrayal, but the quieter ache of clarity. Like when you realize the storm has passed, but now you have to deal with the wreckage. The part no one wants to talk about. The cleanup. The rebuilding. That day, I met with Angela again, my attorney. We finalized the filing. Simple, straightforward. No kids. No shared business. Just a house and a few joint accounts, all of which I told her to divide evenly. I didn't want a war. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted out. Angela looked over the papers, then up at me. "You're handling this better than most." I almost laughed. "Because I'm not throwing mugs or burning her clothes?" She smiled gently. "Because you're not trying to hurt someone just to feel better." That's rare. That stuck with me all day. It reminded me of something my dad used to say before he passed: "Don't let what they did turn you into something you're not." My father had lived through betrayal of his own, though he never talked much about it. But I remembered the way he held his dignity like armor, quietly, fiercely. I wanted that for myself now more than ever. The real surprise came 3 days later when I returned to the storage unit and found an envelope taped to the door. No name. Just a faint smear of lipstick on the edge of the seal. I knew it was from her. I took it inside, sat down, and stared at it for a while before opening it. My heart didn't race this time. I wasn't scared. Just curious. Inside was a letter, handwritten again, this time longer. Her penmanship was neater than usual. Controlled. "Russell? I didn't send this to ask for forgiveness. I know I'm the last person who has a right to even use that word. But I need you to hear this, even if you never write back, never call, never look me in the eye again. What I did, it wasn't about him. It was about me. About who I'd become. I let the comfort of your loyalty blind me to how deeply I'd stopped participating in our marriage. I was selfish. Cowardly. I told myself you wouldn't notice, that you didn't care, that we were just coasting. But you did care. You always did. And I used your patience like it was endless. You deserve to be loved like you love, without fear, without keeping score, without needing to look over your shoulder. I don't expect you to believe any of this matters now. But it does to me. Because you were the best thing in my life, and I let you become a stranger. I'll sign the papers. I won't fight you. And if you ever want to talk about anything, I'll listen this time. Goodbye, Trina." I didn't cry. I thought I would. But I didn't. I folded the letter slowly, carefully, like I was placing it into a museum case. Not because I wanted to treasure it, but because it belonged to a part of my life that was now behind glass. Sealed. Observed, but no longer touched. That weekend, I drove out to the coast, the same place I'd taken her once during better years. This time, I went alone. I walked along the waterline with my shoes in one hand and the wind stinging my face, and I thought about the man I used to be. The one who bent himself into knots to keep someone who had already let go. The one who thought that love was measured in endurance. I watched the waves crash against the rocks and realized something I hadn't been ready to accept until that moment. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with your head up, your chest open, and your heart finally quiet. As I stood there, staring at the gray-blue horizon, my phone buzzed again. Not from her this time. A message from Devin. "There's a poker game Saturday night. No pressure, but we could use someone to lose quietly." I smiled. For the first time in a long time, I wanted to say yes. Saturday came, and for once, I didn't feel like hiding. I showed up to Devin's poker night with a six-pack and a bag of chips I picked up from a gas station on the way. The guys didn't ask too many questions. They cracked jokes, dealt cards, and mocked each other over terrible hands like nothing in the world could ever really go wrong. And for one beautiful night, I let myself belong to that simplicity. I laughed, I lost $20, and I actually talked. Not about Trina, not about the divorce, but about dumb movies, bad takeout, and why I'll never understand fantasy football. It was nothing special, and it was everything I needed. A week later, I moved out of the storage unit for good. Found a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. Nothing fancy, just mine. Clean walls, new beginnings. I bought secondhand furniture, hung up a few prints I'd always liked but never had space for, and this one was big. I adopted a dog from the shelter, a scruffy black mutt with big ears and no manners. I named him Milo, after the quiet kid in middle school who used to draw superheroes on his binder. Milo followed me everywhere, even to the bathroom. I didn't mind. He made the place feel alive. Some nights were still hard. Healing isn't linear. I'd catch myself looking at the empty chair across the dinner table or hear a song we once danced to at a wedding and feel my throat tighten. But then Milo would drop a slobbery toy in my lap, or I'd get a random text from Devin saying, "Still alive? Don't ghost me like your ex." And I'd remember I was moving forward, even if it was just one shaky step at a time. One afternoon in May, I took a walk downtown. There was a street fair going on, food trucks, local art, musicians playing covers from the 90s on worn-out guitars. I wandered with no real goal in mind, just soaking in the noise, the colors, the comfort of strangers laughing without pain behind their eyes. That's when I met her. She was standing at a booth selling handmade candles. Tall, soft features, big glasses that kept slipping down her nose. She smiled at me like she'd been expecting me, even though we'd never met. Her name was Helen. She'd just moved to the city, sold her condo up north after a messy split. We talked for an hour without realizing time was passing. About books, about dogs, about how weirdly comforting it is to burn a lavender candle after a rough day. I didn't ask for her number. She offered it. Weeks later, we went for coffee, then dinner, then another dinner. There were no fireworks, no breathless kisses in the rain, just comfort, conversation, kindness, the kind of ease you only recognize when you've lived through the opposite. I didn't rush anything. I didn't try to fill a void. I just showed up, and so did she. Eventually, I told her everything. About the ring, the bar, the betrayal. She didn't flinch. She just said, "I'm glad you left. Some people never do." And I think that was the moment I realized how far I'd come. Not in miles, but in self-worth. So here I am now, months later, still learning, still rebuilding, still finding pieces of myself in unexpected places. I don't hate Trina. I don't wish her harm. I hope she finds the version of herself that doesn't run from the hard parts.
But as for me, I found peace. I found freedom. And most importantly, I found me.